So I saw something really interesting that I wanted to talk about. This is something that we've talked about before. We've talked about it on a couple of our lives in the past, but when you hear someone that's connected to a situation like Steve Smith and then an NFL insider like James Palmer talk about this from their perspectives, you get a wealth of different situations that happen when they discuss it, right? Like one, James Palmer is an NFL insider, right? So he's got mad information that he's being fed to him by different, scouts, executives, GMs, coaches, and some of the things that he, puts out there has to be layered truth sometimes, but he's not going to compromise any of his sources because it would make him incredible if he, or it would take his credibility away if he did, right? And then with Smitty, he works with the team really closely, right? So that going into this situation, Bryce Young had a really, really tough circumstance happen when he got benched, right? And there were a ton of teams. Now, Smitty talked about a lot of this stuff in his video. I will link that below in the comments so you can watch the whole video. So I'm not going to talk about the whole thing, but there was this part that they talked about, which was some comic relief, but it was something I wanted to cover because it was like, this is something that we have talked about ad nauseum, and to hear two people say it like this makes all the sense in the world. So check it out.
I think he solidified the fact that this is your guy for next season.
Well, we'll stop right there for just a second. I think that he has. Many of you think that he has. But I'll be honest with you. I'm not always sure that Dave Canales thinks that he has. Now, if it's possible, there might be some sort of competitive advantage that Dave Canales has by keeping Bryce Young on his toes. Maybe it creates a sense of urgency, right? But I listened to a video earlier today from Mike K where he was kind of talking about the same thing where he's like, man, I just still don't feel like there's that complete vote of confidence that Bryce Young is your franchise quarterback. All right, well, if that's the case, is that what everybody thinks? Maybe not.
Teams were calling when he got benched. Teams were calling.
Yeah.
Was like, hey, yeah, he can't play, but I'll take him. Bring that problem over yonder. Bring him over here in our hood. We'll take that headache.
Guys, I know you're tired of him. We don't think he can play either. Well, they're trying to get him to come to their team because we're seeing all the reasons why he was number. So I want to see what ends up happening moving forward. We know that they tried to, they spent some money on the interior of part of the offensive line, trying to bulk it up to protect him. We look at what they did in the draft, getting 2 receivers, and I think the back end of this season, Steve, for what they want to do around him, and this is a perfect question for you.
All right, so let's stop right there. Comic relief for them, but so much layered truth there, boy. We'll take him. We like him. Oh, yeah. So do we. So do a lot of us. When they put this story out, when this was something that was floating out there in the ethos when Bryce Young got benched after the Charger game, and things just started to progress. The story became a national story. All these different people, Mel Kiper went on his, his rant. Tons of different people went on their rants, right? It was kind of a foregone conclusion that you think, okay, if you bench him this early, yeah, you're done with him. We've seen it happen with many other quarterbacks, some who have had more success, right? Chicago benched Mitch Trubisky, and the last time that they've been to the playoffs, he was a starting quarterback. Now, does that mean that Mitch Trubisky is any good? I think you know the answer to that. But the point is that we've seen people get benched that had better success than what Bryce had. Is a little bit of sample size of success of 2 wins, last year, and obviously, terrible play up until the point where he got benched. But Dan Orlovsky had said something on TV, and I thought about this, and I was like, man, it's the same sentiment that I have. It's the same thing that Smitty said when he sat down with him and waxed poetic about man, I saw you throw that corner route. I know, man, I love to suit up. I know I can't do nothing, but man, that looked good. When they were sitting down right there at Bryce Young's pro day. It is hard to unsee what you saw with him coming in. It's very difficult to unsee that. Dano said it's hard for me to unsee the 500 yards against Arkansas. It's hard for me to unsee the 460 against Georgia in the SEC championship. It's hard for me to unsee what happened in the Auburn drive the year before he got drafted, right? Where it was kind of a down year. And he goes on that drive to win the game. Doing a lot of the same stuff that we saw him do Sunday in that late drive to almost beat the Eagles, right? So other teams, and here's the perfect scenario. So I thought about this from the perspective of the team that we literally played Sunday. You got two different things going on at the same time. On one side of your sideline, if you're Philadelphia, you got all this infighting going on. You just won 9 straight games, right? By all intents and purposes, many people think you're the best team in the NFL. And you got all this infighting going on because of why? Really, it comes down to one source. It's the fact that Jalen is not seeing the field well. They do a lot of really good things well. They have tons of great players, talent, all kind of stuff all over the place, right? But I guarantee you, 2 things were happening on that coaching sideline Sunday. They were looking at their guy missing plays, and they were looking at our guy making them. And I know in their heart of hearts, and it wouldn't even surprise me, if they had a chance to do what many of the other teams that were supposedly interested doing with him, to bring him in as, he's a backup, damaged goods. But in the back of their mind, like, man, if that boy can recreate what he did in college here with these guys, boy. I'm just glad it's all coming to light. I'm glad we're seeing it. Not for justification. I don't care about that. I sat out there and had takes like, here's what I'm never going to do. I'm never going to get on platform and I might come on and apologize to some of my contemporaries, right? And be like, yo, I went a little too hard at you about this pause. So I want to apologize about how hard I went about it, right? And I do my best. Like when new information is presented to me, I try to not make it look like I'm just flip-flopping, right? But on this, man, I done stood 10 toes. I stood 10 toes. So I'm going to live in this a little bit, at least until I can't. Because I know that a lot of you out there feel the same way that I feel. If he turns into the franchise quarterback that we all believe he can be, it's a huge win. Now, they went on to talk about things like there's some comparisons they made. They talked about the comparison to potentially Pat because he does some things that you just don't see a lot of quarterbacks being able to do at this level, at this height, right? Especially with his, stature. But more importantly, just his style of play. And that's what I saw. It was the style of play for me. It was the broken plays. It was the announcer on CBS called even the lateral was a Heisman moment, right? Where Bryce didn't see his running back and just kind of dumped it off really quick, where it's almost like he's got eyes everywhere. And we saw a lot of that happen, like when he broke containment in the end zone and threw that ball to Legette. It's like you and me doing that, I'm sorry, you could try to tell me all day long, oh, man, I could do that. No, you can't. No, you can't. Because if you could, you'd be where he's at. I'm just glad that the confidence is there for him to be able to do this again, and I look forward to seeing what's going to happen moving forward. But the main thing that I wanted to cover and talk about was that I'm glad that they came out and said what a lot of us have been saying out loud, is that teams, if it were true that Carolina was considering it. Now, I know the phone calls were probably made, and maybe Dan was like, especially when you listen to what Steve said that Dan said about Bryce earlier in this same video. Like I said, I'll put a link in the comments so you can check the whole thing out. What he said about Bryce and how he still had confidence in him lets me know that they had no intention of really truly trading him. But sometimes, if I'm just honest, when I watch the press conferences, it still doesn't feel like there's that complete confidence in Bryce. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. Make sure to comment below, like and subscribe. Share this video if you can. So Sunday, Cowboys playing. I'm going to be live streaming along with one of my homies, the Angry Cowboys fan. We're going to talk a lot of junk. We're going to have a lot of fun, man. If y'all can, show up, support the channel, support the Panthers. I want us to get this win. One of the first times, as I saw in the press conference with Dave earlier, that we've been favored to win a game probably in the last, 10, 12, 13 games or whatever. So this is huge. So I think we can go into this game, get a big win. I don't want to kill the draft position, but at the same time, man, the more reps these guys get together, maybe we discover that there's some needs that we thought we needed that we really don't. But either way, man, make sure to smash that like button on your way out. I'm John John Farmer from the One Carolina Show. All over it. Keep pounding.